death is inevitable. The pain we suffer because of it is both unbearable and unthinkable. In the midst of our sorrow, we wonder if those who have passed are gone forever. Do they remain frozen in time until the end of days? Or can they hear us? Can they see us? Do they have a message?
Let him know that you're here. Okay. That was crazy. Now I'm going to explain to you what we just heard.
Hello. Welcome to the Necromancer Live Show. I'm your host, Justin Brown, and this week we have another really cool guest for the show. His name is Robert Veach of V Paranormal, and he is a electrical engineer. So we get to talk about all the cool, custom designs for devices that he uses and makes for his paranormal research to try to validate and to try to use scientific principles and methods to objectify what the paranormal is. So without any further ado, we'll bring him onto the show. Robert, how are you doing this evening?
Hey, I'm doing fine. How you doing?
I'm doing good. We were just talking about the little massacre he just endured just today. He says he almost cut his entire finger off, but luckily it was only the tip. Is that right?
Yeah. Brand new set of knives. So I've learned over the years how to use instant glue to heal just about anything.
Wow. Yeah, I'm still amazed that happened to you today, because when I ask you if you're all right, you're still smiling and you're still in good spirits. So that's good that you can stay that way after sustaining the cut.
Once the bleeding stops, that's a good part.
Right. Yeah. Once the bleeding stops, that's definitely good. So we have you on the show finally. I've been following your work for at least 3, if not 4 years. I love your approach and your ideas when it comes to how to, try to figure out how we can validate and how we can, objectify things when it comes to things like spirit communication and a whole host of other things that, we research in the paranormal field. So before we get into all that, how about you let our viewers know a little bit about your background, educational wise, and after we talk about that. We'll actually talk about what got you into the paranormal in the first place. Why in the heck do you do this? Why does somebody like you do this sort of thing? So go ahead and let us know a little bit about your technical background.
Well, ever since I was probably 14, 15 years old, I was the kind of person that always took things apart, whether it be mechanical things or electrical. So I've always been building and tinkering with electronics for as long as I can remember. And so my background's in electrical engineering. Went to some colleges in the Chicagoland area and got a degree in engineering. And also was working on computer science, a master's degree also. So my background's engineering, and I, maybe about 7-8 years ago, I had a picture taken at one of my sister's mom's house at around Christmas time, and somebody had just died in the family. And there was this really strange aura, almost like smoke, around my son, Stephen, in the picture. And it just intrigued me. It was many years ago. And that kind of started me off to wondering what's going on. And so then I brought a bunch of cameras there and tried to capture more and get some more EVPs, things like that, or get some EVPs. So that was kind of the start of it. And I've always watched some of these ghost shows on TV, which I really don't like too much, but they're interesting. And I always got a little bit aggravated with the equipment or how they used it. So then I started buying my own equipment, taking it apart, modifying it. And it kind of just blew out of proportion from that to the point where I started developing my own paranormal research devices, just to have something that's a little bit out of the box and a little different, and maybe get some better results, hopefully, to explain some of this crazy stuff going on.
Right. Can you elaborate and be a little bit more specific about what kind of irritates you about the devices that they were using and the ways they were using it?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's so many things I don't even know where to begin. When you see them use a flashlight test, that kind of always bothered me because there's so many variables in that. There's thermal variables, the switch can make a contact after the LED heats up or the incandescent bulb heats up. That always bothered me. They use digital recorders sometimes, like the Panasonic, the series that is relatively old and has this terrible audio where you can kind of think you're hearing anything you want to hear. That always bothered me. And just the way they were using their EMF meters, and several things, but mostly it's the use of the equipment that wasn't quite being used the right way, I felt. So I'd always be screaming at the TV a little bit when I watched some of these shows.
Almost like you're watching football or a sports game.
Right.
Instead.
You're trying to redirect them and you have no control over it.
That's really cool. I can relate to that, and what a lot of people like me and you run into or learn along the way is the people who wouldn't generally know how to get into this, what tools to use, what they should do. They're actually using these shows as almost like a blueprint or a how-to when it comes to actually legitimately trying to look into things and investigate things using the devices and the methods that they use on the show. So that has caused problems, obviously. A lot of people, they'll take it as it is, but they don't learn that you have to separate. And once you get to a point of understanding how you separate the entertainment, aspect of it and what is, actually bad practice. And like ghost hunters, like the flashlight thing that you mentioned, ghost hunters use that so much in their shows, and that was one of their main ways to validate if there's a spirit present there. And they were actually using it as an ITC device or a method. Then people looked into it, and they tried to debunk things. So the skeptics came out of the woodworks and say, hey, wait a minute, there's something going on here. So once that got debunked, it was interesting because now people were suffering from the cognitive dissonance that comes along with, oh wait, my favorite show, they're wrong, how do I deal with that? So there was a split, and there was also a divide. I thought that was cool but necessary, in the whole paranormal pop culture movement. So, what was one of the first things that you took apart and then you reevaluated and implied or used in your research?
Gosh, I know that the flashlight test I started to experiment with, and I'm still working on a way to make that work where I don't even use flashlights. But it kind of redirected me towards a device that I invented where I use a laser beam that shoots through a prism on a balance spring. And the idea was, you could have an entity, if they could just go near that, it was so sensitive, they could make that move. And the projected laser was set 10, 50 feet away on a wall, and you get this moving pattern. So I was kind of frustrated with the flashlight test, and that was the first thing I kind of built from that. The first thing that I kind of modified, I'm trying to think back, the first thing that I modified was probably the Ghost Box, the PSP7. I just improved the audio and removed the antenna and did some other things too. That was like the very first thing that I modified. That was actually something I had purchased. And then then I get these ideas and I build upon them using those devices or using totally new devices, essentially.
Okay. That's cool that you did that. We are going to actually talk about a few things that you've developed that I actually really like and have a lot of questions about. But let's talk about your personal belief in the afterlife, spiritually or just critically, how you critically think about it. What are your beliefs? I'm kind of interested in what your actual beliefs are. Are you open to just about anything? Do you just not know, or do you already have a belief after doing this, what you're doing now, of what you found out in your research?
When I first started and I took that picture with my son and it had the smoky aura around it, at that point I was just getting into the paranormal because of that picture, and I started off being 100% skeptic from that point on, early on, and because I just didn't believe any of this existed. I didn't believe in the afterlife or anything. But after doing this research and building these devices and getting some of the results that we've obtained, I think that there's a phenomenon going on. There's no question about it in my mind now. I just don't know how to quantize it or categorize it, because there's nothing that's 100% clear in terms of EVPs. There's, to get visual evidence is really difficult. But I feel, after doing this for a while now, that there's definitely something that's paranormal going on. It's not our imaginations. The equipment is responding like it shouldn't be responding in environments that have activity. So now I was on the fence for many years. I started off being totally debunker. Then I was on the fence, and now I'm kind of off the fence towards the reality that it's worth going forward and doing more research and coming up with better equipment and better results and better methodologies to catch something. Because now I'm pretty convinced that there's something going on. We just don't know what it is at this point, but it's paranormal.
Okay, I agree with you. What things stand out as far as data that makes you a little bit more open-minded that it's possible that there's something going on that's beyond scientific explanation?
Data, to get any kind of response, whether it's auditory or visual, it's extremely difficult. For me, it is, at least. It's almost like sometimes I feel that my equipment is intimidating, and sometimes I see results obtained when I've gone on an investigation with people that are sensitive to things in the environment, and I have all this other equipment. Sometimes I don't get a lot of stuff. But over the years, I have gotten interesting EVPs and some interesting visual evidence of something going on. Somebody's hair being moved. You see a collar being moved like that. And I've gotten some really cool EVPs in a basement, several locations that, excuse me, you really should not have been there. we were all quiet and we were asking questions and we got a response. So it's all those things combined that kind of make me over the fence and more of a believer right now. Excuse me. I gotta take a drink.
So, to me, that's interesting. For a skeptic and someone who looks at things very objectively, outside, someone who's very prone to imaginatory things, what things that apply are your upbringing, how you developed as far as, spiritually and what you actually believe. But what's interesting about you, Robert, is you coming from that skeptical origin and then now, really coming to terms with, okay, there may be something going on here. That's cool for people, like not only like you and I, but others out there who may find it hard to believe that these things may have validity. So what the main thing I like is seeing people who are skeptics but are willing to take all the time and money and energy that it takes to look into these things. I think that's the most, thing that stands out. That's what I highlight about people like you, that I want to convey to our viewers and other people who are showing interest on both sides of the fence and people that are on the fence that, hey, it's only fair game if you are willing to look into it enough and put forth enough effort to do so to have some say in the debate. So I applaud you for doing that, and
Thanks.
It's very interesting that you are still in the game and still trying to pursue the answers that you seek. And I mean, I love it. It's just like it draws you in and it intrigues you, and every once in a while you'll get this little bit of information that says, hey, that should not be there. I cannot debunk that. I cannot explain that. What is that? So it keeps you going, essentially.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. And, on my team, I've got my brother, my son, brother-in-law. Sometimes my wife will go with us. But my brother is the debunker. And I have my father-in-law is a debunker, too. And he's this highly educated, multiple PhD, ex-IBM CEO kind of guy. And my brother is highly educated, and he's the same way. They debunk things, but they don't take the effort to really look into what's happening or really look at the evidence. It's very easy to say it's all in your imagination. I don't hear that EVP. You're never going to hear it. We're never going to agree. I don't see anything in that picture. It's all noise. It's all white noise, or, that's a radio station and the ghost box. It's so easy just to blow everything off. But when they're there investigating, they would come across something. Sometimes they still blow it off. That's the thing that always amazes me, is some people are debunkers because it's very easy to be a debunker because, you sound intelligent. It's like, oh, I know this is not real. So, but it's the people that are in the mud and doing the work and trying to come up with answers and explaining that EVP should not be there. There should be nothing visual there. There's no wind in a room to move a collar or to move the hair of that person. There's things like that. There's, how do you explain something moving, a vibration moving, this laser beam on a prism when you ask a question? So it's easy to be a debunker, but it's very difficult to be a paranormal researcher and to really try and show evidence and be really critical of your evidence too. So, that's what motivates me, is that I feel there's going to be a holy grail of something I'm going to get at some point with my equipment. And that's why I invented, things like the Selfie, the Shadow, and just the Touch, the Talk. Para is all of them, just about. Whenever I can fit the word para in there, I try.
Right. And before we get into those things that you mentioned, I just want to emphasize that you are painstakingly trying to convince people like your family members who are investigating with you and helping you in your research to say, hey, look, here are the variables, here are the independent variables, okay? You pick through them one at a time, and you got to, you have to say, hey, okay, there's no wind to move that. There's no variable to move the laser beam? I mean, you have to tell me what's doing it. It has to be there in the data for you to say, no, it's not what it is, right? And when you do that, I mean, what do they do? I mean, do they stop the conversation, or do they just try to look for other things to explain it?
It's really bizarre. In the case of my brother, we were at an investigation of a private home, and the individual has this entity that just constantly harasses him and follows him around, moves keys, breaks doors. We saw a door that was broken, and the way it was broken was very unique, and the way it was slammed. And this individual said that he hears this popping sound like a can being crushed. And he hears this all the time, this EVP. For him, it's not EVP, he hears it. So I had my brother with us, and he was on the investigation. This is the second time we were there. This homeowner went to take a nap, and we had a bunch of equipment set up. I had this Paratalk, which I was talking into. I had a USB special microphone, and I was running some basic audio software. I think it was Adobe Edition. And we're asking questions, and I said, the homeowner hears this unusual popping sound, and you're harassing him, and can you make this sound for us right now? And right on the screen, because we were looking at the timeline, you see this unusual blip, and then another little blip, and then nothing. Now, in the room, we're hearing nothing. But I said, what is that? So I stopped the recording, and here's my debunker brother, and he's looking at the recording. We play it back, and you hear me ask the question, and you literally hear this popping sound and this can crush, right, EVP, right in front of his eyes. And his answer is, it's our imagination that we must have made that sound. And then I say, wait a second, let's listen to the other digital recorder. The other digital recorder, which was not a USB recorder, which is a good recorder, Olympus, which I, have right here, it has the audio of me asking the question, and it does not have that pop on there and that can crush.
So you cross-checked it.
And then there was another recorder, and then there was the camera. That was the full spectrum camera, and only one of them had it on the recording. So, because as you know, these EVPs are very selective. They could pick one of the devices. So, and then you show that to a debunker person, and he doesn't have an answer really, but he says it's our imagination, but yet he's looking at the wave. And my brother's an audio person. He's highly educated, engineering, software, and he had a studio for many years in Chicago. So he knows audio. So, you ask a debunker like my brother, and I say, out of all the thousands of hours of recording, have you ever had something that was on a recording that you didn't hear in the room? He goes, no. And then, so you can't win. It's like, it's very easy for a debunker just to say, it's our imagination. It's the wind. It's the microphone. It's the software. Even when you show evidence like that, I always have multiple recorders going. And here's a classic case where you can see it's literally on that one microphone only. And it's exactly when the homeowner came back from his nap, I said to him, I'm going to play you back something, and I want you to tell me what you think this is. I didn't tell him anything else. And he's this kind of grumpy older guy, ex-Marine guy, the kind of guy, if you look at him wrong, he's going to tear your head off. And kind of a scary guy. And so I'm playing it, and you hear me asking a question. Then you hear this pop in this can crunch. And he says, what the fuck? I hear that all the time. And that was his voice, So he knew exactly what it was because he hears it all the time.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but going back to debunkers, it's the same way with my brother-in-law. I'm sorry, with my father-in-law. Highly educated, multiple degrees, and he'll just be on an investigation. We were at Bachelor's Grove, which is supposed to be the most haunted cemetery in the world, which I don't really think it is anymore. But, we got some evidence, and he just says it's just our imagination. We're just hearing what we want to hear, So you can't win with debunkers because they take the easy way out.
Do you think
They
that
don't
that's
take the research.
why? Do you think that that mentality and that reaction to that type of data presented to them is why the paranormal field has not been given the credit it deserves with those types of people, with the scientific community, with the degrees, with the education, and the unwillingness to listen to what's laid out in front of them? Do you think that's a problem?
Yes, I do. You know, in a lot of ways, a lot of people involved in paranormal, they think they're doing things the right way. They're trying to get evidence. Some of their methodologies may not be, I may not agree with it, but they're really trying. They're working on this stuff diligently like we're trying to do. And then it's quite easy for the debunkers to come in and just say, it's all in your imagination. A lot of times, you know, a debunker person won't even want to listen to the evidence. Or if you present an EVP and you happen to make the mistake of saying, I think it's saying this name, then they won't even listen to it, because then you're putting it in their mind, you know, which is true to a certain extent, the pareidolia and everything. But overall, I agree with what you're saying, that you know, it has a big impact on it. It's very easy to be a debunker, and I've gotten in arguments. There's a famous debunker who he's part of the Debunker Society in California. He's world renowned. And I've had arguments back and forth with him over the phone, and I've sent him evidence, and just doesn't want to look at it. He knows in his heart it's all fake.
Right.
You know, you can't win when it's just bizarre, because I'm as science based as I think I could be, and I look at all the variables. I throw a large percentage of everything out, and I present what I think is correct information, and still they just debunk it and say it's meaningless data. And it's a shame. It's a shame, because as you know, and I know now after doing this for a while, that there's 100% something going on. These things that we're picking up, whether they're visual, whether they're audio, whether they're touch, they're not supposed to be there. You know, Justin, I've been recording audio because I've been singing since I was 12. It runs my family. My father sang, and I've got relatives that were professional singers. So I'm the kind of geeky guy that had, you know, tape recorders, and I had multiple reel-to-reel recorders, and I had recorded thousands of recordings of my family, not just me singing, but my family. And I used to synchronize Super 8 movies to reel-to-reel before it was even done. And about 6 years ago, I decided to digitize all of this and bring it all in to my computer and put it on a backup drive. Mm-hmm. And you know, of all the recordings from my whole life since I was 12 till me being 55 or 54, I did not hear one EVP. Everything that was there as audio. But yet, as you know, you go to an investigation and you're there for 6 or 8 hours, you may get nothing, but you may get that one EVP in the room when you ask a question and everybody's quiet, and you know it's an EVP. People that are good at this know what EVP sound like. They're not fooled. You know, they know what live audio is. And I always bring a stereo microphone so that I know, because most of the time the EVP comes right in the center, and you just know what it is. So all those recordings that I did since I was 12, nothing paranormal on them. So that tells me something, you know, just from a scientific point of view. That tells me that when you go to a location that has possible activity, you're probably going to get something, and it's legit, because it's just not supposed to be there. And that's what you try and do. You validate, you throw out the things that are chairs moving, or somebody making a sound or a sniffle. You know what those are because you listen to the stereo. But the real EVPs, they stand out, and you and me know what they sound like, and we present them.
Right. EVPs, they're not acoustic energy, and like you said, they come across as a mono signal because it's a manipulation of transducers, or, you know, something that's not, you know, acoustic. So it won't come across the left or right. Like you said, even though if you're using a stereo mic, and what's interesting and how I can relate to what you just said is I come from a musical background and audio engineering background before I was a paranormal researcher and an EVP guy. We worked in controlled environments. We worked in sound stages and sound rooms. We controlled what was, acoustically, in the environment. So you can how to eliminate contamination and things you don't want to appear on the recordings. So you take that and apply it, and that what you're getting is legit because you already know what you're doing. And I think that's great and very important to emphasize after you just saying that. That's great that you do that. And it's very important for all the people watching this live and in post after this live stream is ended. Please learn from those examples and from that skill set from people who have, went through all the educational steps to learn how to record properly and to control all of that is, that is very important. And the very definition of EVP is it's not acoustic, it's electrical. You have to hear it. It has to come across in a certain way, as you said, and we have to know the actual definition of what we're doing. So that's great.
Yep.
So let's shift gears now, Robert. Let's talk about some of the stuff that you've been developing that you can call your own.
Okay.
Let's talk about the Paranormal Selfie. It's a visual instrument. Is that correct?
Yes. I call it the Paraselfie. Yeah, like I was joking, I use para whenever I can, unless it just doesn't work in the name. But I was thinking about all the popularity of people taking selfies of themselves. It's like a new phenomenon. Something like 300 people a year die from taking selfies. I was stunned when I did a search on that.
Wow.
Like falling off cliffs, getting hit by cars. It was 300 people worldwide. If you do a search, you'll find it. It's bizarre. So it's so popular. And then I'm thinking, all the times that we try and get an entity to get on camera. And the problem is that they could be anywhere in a room. You'd have to have cameras. You have to have like 500 cameras in my house to catch something, because they're not just going to go where you ask them to go. So I thought, how can I motivate them to maybe be seen? And that's where I came up with the Paraselfie. And it's essentially it's like a mirror. It's like an electronic mirror. If you walk in front of this system, it shows your image on a monitor, on an HD monitor in front of you, kind of like a mirror would. And if an entity goes in front of there, if a shadow figure moves across it, you'll see it and it'll be recorded in HD. I could also transmit the image to another room so I could be a separate room. So I also thought about the fact that one time I brought shadows to my house from an investigation. It's the first time I did that, and couldn't believe it. So I thought, I tried to capture them, and there's no way I could capture them because I'd have to have 500 cameras. Right. So that's what I said, make the Paraselfie where you can ask them, you can leave the room, you can leave it running for 6, 7, 8 hours, see if you can get them to go in front of this. And I also realized that some things are so fast moving that you're not going to be able to capture them unless you have a strobe of some kind. So everybody knows that you go to a party or you've been on a dance floor and you see what the strobe does, and it shows motion. Just like this camera is not keeping up with my motion, strobe you see my hand like this, then like this, and like this, and like this. So I thought, how can I incorporate this monitor to motivate them to be seen, and also maybe capture something that's fast moving? So that's where I put the strobe circuit in there. And I have a stroboscope that has a choice of 1 of 10 different rates. So if something's really fast, it would go to a faster rate. If something's slow, go to a slower rate. And then I thought, because we don't know what these entities are made out of, if they exist, we don't know, I used every type of light I could think of. So there's infrared, there's ultraviolet, there's white light, and there's even a special red narrow band that you see people use for healing wounds and things. So that's what I developed. I have this blinking strobe that is controlled, not by me, not by pushing a switch, but by the entity itself. The entity can actually change which one of those 10 positions it likes to make itself look the best. And it does that through using the K2 meter, using a geo touch sensor, using a static field detector that I developed. And it takes those input, and if they manipulate those in any way, they get instant feedback and the light changes and they see what they look like and they can pick the one that makes them the best. So that was the concept of Paraselfie, because, if they exist, why aren't they vain still? Mm-hmm. I'm going to be going to an investigation with an investigator. Her name is Cheryl. And one of the persons was murdered. It was his model, 17-year-old model, famous case of unsolved mystery. So she thought it was the perfect thing to bring there because she's kind of vain, and maybe we can get her to go in front of this thing and manipulate those devices. And maybe she could pick number 8 out of 10, and that makes her look the clearest. Or who knows, maybe she'll swing by and it'll automatically detect that, and the strobe will kick on and we'll get some blurred image or something. Who knows, But that was how that got invented, the Paraselfie.
Right. And I love the device. I love how you applied all of your questions and, the things you wondered about and to the device. I mean, he explained it very well, guys, but to truly know what he's talking about, you have to go to his YouTube channel or his website. It's very easy to find. Just type in Paraselfie and V Paranormal. You can go to vparanormal.com and check it out. Essentially, what it is it gives you a way. If a spirit wants to be seen, it can be seen by this device one way or another. And
yep.
the speeds in which the light strobe can be controlled, as he said, either through electromagnetic fields, static, phenomena, or actual touching, a geo phone type device that allows you, to switch the things. So I love that idea. I think that's probably one of the things that intrigued me the most was the strobing. You put a fan in front of it to demonstrate how it works, and you can actually control and stop the white painted fan blade, because you use a 3 bladed fan in the video, and you can
I was just trying to demonstrate.
Mm-hmm. So I think that if the spirit or what have you wanted to be seen, it could figure out a way to be seen, and I love it. I can't say much more about it, and it's fascinating that you would go through that much trouble to come up with it, because it looks like something you cannot whip up just in a day or two. It looks like something that you worked on quite a bit. And I also have a device that is going to take us a while to get right, but we won't talk about that now. But how long have you been deploying that in your research? How long have you used it? Has it got any results yet?
I used it on 2 investigations so far, in a residential home where the little girl was experiencing things and these bizarre orbs that looked unique, these little pops of light. And we didn't get anything on the Paraselfie, but in a way we did. We actually got something that, I'm mixing 2 investigations. We did actually get something with the Paraselfie in that investigation. What's fascinating is that I was going through the frames, 30 frames per second, and I thought I saw something go across the screen. And when I slowed it up on 1.5 to 2.5 to 3 frames, you could see a black mass come in and stop and go like that. And it was really cool. So I did get something on that investigation. And then we brought it to a famous Capone restaurant that was being built, restored, that people have had all these paranormal experiences there. We put Capone pictures up, and I kind of taunted Capone with pre-recorded questions and left it running. But I couldn't get anything on that investigation from it. But so far it's yielded something once, and not yielded something on another investigation. We'll be bringing it to this upcoming investigation I mentioned with Cheryl, and we'll see if we can get this 17-year-old woman who was murdered and last seen in this restaurant, see if we can pick up something there. A lot of times I always feel that maybe I scare entities away if they exist, if they're intimidated by this equipment. So that's why I have the ability to remotely transmit the image so we can go in another room or actually leave it there. Because maybe I'm intimidating all my questions and all this crazy equipment. I would be afraid of it if I was, from 1940 and not know what all this gizmo stuff is. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we'll get something in this investigation. But, I'm also hoping to bring it on the next season of a television show called Ghost Towns with the Tennessee Wraith Chasers. And hopefully we'll bring it on that. One of their episodes that they're going to be filming soon, But I hope I capture something more significant than a quick little shadow. I would love to capture an image of a person, even a shadow moving. You see it moving in and out. Anything that's not supposed to be there, it's going to capture. And it'd be so cool to see those LEDs moving and see the K2 meter responding and or the geo box responding or the static sensor. Or I've also forgotten, it also has the proximity sensor, the REM pod.
Right. It has everything.
It's got a REM pod too. And because Gary Yucca is the inventor, he kind of does amazing stuff. And you can't take it apart to tap into the electronics. So I ended up just tapping into one of the LEDs on the top of the sensor. But so now I've got a proximity sensor too. So I'm doing static, proximity, electromagnetic, and geo. And hopefully one of those will be triggered by an entity.
Right. And the proximity, it actually works on capacitance. So that's
right.
That's
a lot of people think it's EMF. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a change in voltage of the capacitance that actually sets it off. I actually do a lot of research with that, so I understand exactly what would set that off, and that would be fascinating if you do get responses with that. I would love to follow up with you, a year from now and seeing what kind of data that you've been able to capture with that. But what's worth mentioning is Tennessee Wraith Chasers have reached out to you and have, said, hey, wait a minute, this Robert guy, he has some cool stuff that would just fit right into what we're doing. And he had you on, he featured one of your devices on a show, and we'll talk about that briefly. What was that?
Oh, that was on the show Ghost Asylum. It was episode 9, the last season they were on. And they had a investigation of a building, a famous building, where somebody was decapitated in an elevator, and there's just all this paranormal activity there. And I brought what's called the parashadow, and I mentioned earlier to you, Justin, the prism with the laser, and we brought that also. But they wanted to see if they can get a shadow to go in front of this parashadow, and we actually captured. There's a couple frames of 2 people in this parabolic mirror, and you could see one of them got suspenders and a hat, and he looks like the one guy that was decapitated. So I forgot to mention that we did capture something. The one Tennessee Wraith Chaser said parashadow hit, and of course you look and they slowed it up and you saw something right there, and it wasn't a shadow from somebody else because they were on the other side of the device. And this is a very focused device. It's kind of like a lens in a camera, something goes in front of it. And that particular device works on a very simple concept. You're on a road on a hot summer day and you look at the asphalt and you see the little ripples in the image. It's doing that with the image. It's multiplying the density, and it lets you see in HD, lets you see the image. So, and we've brought that on a couple of investigations, but haven't really captured anything, simply because, in my mind, the parashadow, it's showing a 2.5-foot diameter sphere, and you're trying to get something to go in front of it. So what's going to motivate them to go in front of it? They're not going to see themselves. So that's why I kind of pushed the concept of the Paraselfie, because I wanted something to motivate them to go in front so that they would see themselves what they look like on the monitor.
I'm very happy to hear you make an analogy about the shadowy-like effects you get from a hot desert road. you know?
Yes.
A lot of people, when they report shadow phenomena to me, and I've actually captured it pretty good at my father-in-law's house. So people like you and me think very similarly. Okay, you're thinking that it's shadows set off passive infrared sensors. They pick up on heat, not cold, not the actual, lack of light, but they pick up on heat. So the heat actually bends the light, bends the stream of photons that are hitting your eye and causing that effect. So what if the shadow anomalies and phenomena are the same physical thing? It's the same physics applied. So if you see a shadow anomaly, what if it's a heat anomaly that's causing the light to be bent, in such a way into your eye to cause that? And when you said that, I was just like, oh man, I'm thinking the same way. And it's great because other people are doing it too. And I think that's great. So if me and you are doing it, there's probably at least a dozen or so, at least in, the US are probably thinking the same thing and are trying to develop, things to test that. So that's exciting to me.
That's why I always show how to build these devices. I try to show the method I use. I give just enough information. I even give the schematic. Mm-hmm. And I show the wiring, how to open up the K2 meter, how to tap off the audio. I show how to modify the ghost box, the PSP7. I show how to build the Para Shadow. Even though it was this complicated mechanical mirror thing, I describe how to build it. And then the other thing that I just recently did, the K2 amplifier and the SP7 validator, I have a whole schematic. So I'm not hiding stuff. It's kind of out there for somebody else to build and try.
Trying to capitalize, and you're not trying to become rich off of this.
I don't sell anything. Yeah, I just lose money on everything.
Yeah, and that's what I want you to know the most about Robert. He is not in this. He's not motivated by money, by becoming famous, or anything. And that's the first thing I got when I started, following your work. I was like, okay, this guy's for real. I know exactly who this guy is. He's my long lost brother. But let's talk about the validator for the SB7. Because this is an ITC show. We ultimately want to come up with methods that will possibly somehow communicate with some, disembodied intelligence, if that's what it is. Right. Let's talk about how, the components of it and how it's used.
Okay. Well, again, what happened, it's funny how I started building this. I was watching a television show. I was watching Ghosts of Shepherdstown, and the one woman engineer on there, fascinated with, because she thinks a lot like you and me, and she's got an engineering background and she's really sharp. But of course, she's on TV, so she has to do certain things a certain way. So I was watching that they were using this geo box. I'm probably calling it wrong. It's a geo something, Earth box. There's all these fancy names for them. And I was getting really frustrated because I kept hearing that there was a big echo in the audio. And you being an audio person, me being an audio person, the last thing we want to do for clarity is put a reverb on anything.
Right.
If I have a bad voice, I want to put a reverb. If I have a good voice, I put reverb because you want to make it more pleasant. So why would you want to take something like an EVP or a ghost box response and throw it through a reverb? So I was getting so frustrated with the show showing this that I said, why are they doing that? So I did a little research, and I found out that the reason why it was annoying me even more is that they were putting the sound from a ghost box like the SP7, they were putting it through a spring reverb. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if you've worked with spring reverbs. I worked with them when I was a teenager making a Pi synthesizer, which was a kit synthesizer. And they're horrible. It's kind of like, imagine taking a Slinky and putting a microphone on one end of the Slinky and putting a speaker on the other end. Mm-hmm. And whatever you send through the speaker vibrates through the Slinky and goes to the microphone.
Right.
And it goes back and forth like a Slinky does, and it gets into resonance, and you get reverb. So I'm like, why would you do that? And the clear answer why they're doing that is because it sounds cool. Sounds scary.
And I think they notice that it is improving how they're hearing it, but at the same time they're tainting it with the effect.
Yes.
So
Yeah. And if you move it, see, their concept is that it's a vibrational sensor. Well, anybody that worked with a spring reverb knows it's not a vibrational sensor, because if you go up to spring reverb, and they're about that big, and you scream into it, you're not going to hear squat. You're going to hear the vibrations of the lower frequencies of your voice. And it's going to reverb on that spring. So you're taking something that's already not that clear. Maybe it is clear. Maybe it's a radio station. Maybe it's a valid ghost box response. And they're kind of putting it through the spring reverb, and then they're amplifying it and sending it out. Now, the one thing that they were doing, which is intelligent, I thought, was they were not just letting you hear all the syllables of the ghost box. They were putting a limitation on that, and they were waiting for a electromagnetic response. So they had essentially a K2 meter somewhere in there, their own type, and they didn't let you hear the ghost box scan unless it got some kind of a response from the K2 meter. So hence, that's why I went ahead and I built the K2 meter amp with the ghost box validator circuit, because I wanted to do what they're doing, but I wanted to eliminate that reverb.
right.
And that's what I did. And the concept was similar. And the difference is I'm using a real K2 meter that you open up and modify. And I'm using my own little circuit. And I'm using the real SB7 Ghost Box. And you know what's fascinating? Gary Galka, who was the famous person that, the engineer that developed the SB7 and the K2 meter and the Mel meter.
Right.
And, you know, he's just a great guy. I've talked with him over the years. I posted this video on YouTube and on my channel, and I also put it on Twitter. And I'm thinking, I hope Gary doesn't see it, because, you know, he might be offended that I'm saying it's a validator, like his ghost box is not validated, and then I'm taking his K2 meter apart. And, you know, about 3 days after I posted it, he reposted it, and he said, look at this great idea that Robert Veach did. And I felt good, because I thought he was going to be kind of upset about it, you know. So even the inventor of the ghost box and the K2 meter millimeter thinks it's a good idea to add some validation to his device, but he didn't say, Robert, you should have put a reverb on there.
Of course he said it was a good idea, and of course he said, I'm glad you didn't put a reverb on there.
Yeah, because if I put a reverb, I would be essentially doing what these geoboxes, or this geophone, that's the word, what they're doing. And you know what kind of upsets me about it? You talked about earlier how these shows affect what people think. You know, they see this crap being used, and then they want one of these devices. And of course, the people are willing to build them for $1,200.
Yeah.
I show how to build this thing with your K2 meter and your ghost box, and for literally $12 worth of parts. But, you know, they want to sell these expensive boxes because they see it on TV and they think it's the real deal. And you see them walking around with it, and they got all the fancy lights to make it look scary, and the old-fashioned box, you know. And I crack up when I see these shows, and I see they put a quartz stone on there, and I saw one where there was a quartz stone, I kid you not, and a RF coil just wrapped around each other with wire.
Right.
I mean, what could that possibly do?
Well, I know what they think it does, but it doesn't do that, because people who are educated know that what they're trying to do, they're trying to take stuff that they are ignorant about. They know just a very, little bit about, and they're trying to implement in what they're trying to do. But, they just need to do some more research. They need, hopefully that when they use it, they notice that it's not doing anything. It can't do anything.
They won't notice.
But
they won't notice.
Right. I don't think they'll,
cool.
Yeah. They just are hung up on the idea that, hey, this is look cool, and all these people are using it, so that's the core reason why they're actually using it in the first place. They're not, going through all the, different experimentation, protocols, trying to look at it objectively at all. They're not saying, okay, well, I didn't yield any results, so I'm going to throw that out. But yeah, I'm with you, buddy. It's it's frustrating to see people do that and charge crazy amounts of money for these things that are essentially just old-fashioned radios that blink and make the audio can't come out of it sound reverby. So
yeah, sounds scary, and it does sound scary. It is cool to hear like a reverby answer in this old-fashioned box with the quartz on there and the speaker and the buttons and everything. But the reality is it could be a radio station. And if it was a valid ghost box response, because I'm not saying ghost boxes don't produce valid results, because I've had phenomenal responses that I've debunked, ridiculous amount of debunking. I don't even have an antenna on my ghost box. I've even put my ghost box in a Faraday shield and gotten things, which is bizarre. But just to throw that through a reverb and to think that you're hearing a name or the word Satan or the devil is just crazy, because it's, don't put a reverb on there. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to anybody who's knows anything about audio. It's just crazy.
Pareidolia is a word that they need to not only look up but understand, and it's legit. It is a psychological phenomena that happens with the brain, and with people with art, that's wired just like us, and it's easily understood. I mean, they use simple ways to describe it. You look up at a cloud, it looks like Godzilla. Okay, it's not Godzilla, but it looks like Godzilla. You know that's not Godzilla, but it looks like Godzilla. So everybody knows that this happens, but they can't apply that to something that they already have a bias, in place for. It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating, as you know, and that's why I have this show. I want people, to not only hear from me, but people of like mind, and maybe not like mind. Maybe we will have some sort of, review or debate on, the methods and the ways to approach this, but not so on this show. I think we're in almost 100% agreement on everything that, that we feel that there's a problem with, or, this is something you should be doing. I think we're pretty much agreeing on everything. I don't think we've ever disagreed on anything that we've talked about. No. And I want things like this to continue in the paranormal field. I want people to keep pushing the truth in front of these people's faces that are biased, and on the other side of the fence say, hey, look, you cannot ignore this forever. You're going to have to, take a look at it at some point if you want to actually give it the time of day that it deserves. Okay, you have to, in order to seek the truth. And before we end the show, and before we get into how people can, learn about you and view your work, I want to end the show with this in mind. After doing this for 4 or 5 years now, the science field is almost becoming dogmatic. It's almost like it's its own religion, and it's almost like, okay, it's real whether you believe it or not. It explains everything, seemingly explains everything away, and explains how everything works, but in reality it doesn't. It's only a way to measure something, not precisely, but better than, it's the best method that we have to measure stuff and to predict things. But it's not what they're advertising. Dark matter, dark energy, we don't know what those things are, okay? And they make up almost everything. And all these things that are are still unknown is overshadowed by what science has figured out. The small things that we have achieved are overshadowing the unknown to this day. And the dogmatic nature of the scientific community is a problem in itself, because, like you said, the skeptics that are biased in their own way will not look at the evidence that supports, paranormal phenomena. So I urge those people and warn those people against having that frame of mind. Please, Robert is working very hard. He wants this stuff to be seen and, as what it is. And I want people to keep that, motivation to keep doing it, because I think eventually people are going to burn out. They're going to say, well, I give up. They're not listening. I can hand it to them on a silver platter right in front of them. They still will deny it. And hopefully, if we just present it in a way that's not abrasive, that's not, trying to, talk somebody down or insult them, just leave it there and let them come across it and say, hey, look, this is what it is. They're not trying to change my mind. They're going to give me the opportunity to make up my own mind or their own mind about it. So if I hope that one day all this science stuff will become available to people with our budgets, and we'll be able to have resources that will allow us to keep pushing the envelope on this whole research thing, because we are limited with if we had $1 trillion, we could build particle accelerators and do things that everybody else that are getting funds and grants for all the rich people to do. I know just looking for neutrinos and coming up with quantum computers is insanely expensive, but it's something that would be helpful to the paranormal field if they had those resources.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well,
I agree.
Before we let you go, Robert, why don't you let all the viewers know how they can find your work, how they can watch your videos, all that, plug everything that you got so they can find you.
Well, you can go to a website called V as in Victor Paranormal. So it's the word paranormal with a V in front of it, .com. And you can see a lot of my investigation videos. You can see where I captured that Selfie shadow. You could see the Capone investigation. You could also see the technical videos, which has most of the technical ones on there. If it's a more recent video, like the K2 amplifier and validator, or the Selfie, then just go to my YouTube channel, V Paranormal 1. So it's the V as in Victor, Paranormal, and then 1 after that, because the V Paranormal was taken. So, and just do a search for Selfie or Paratalk or V Paranormal 1 or V Paranormal, and you'll see the videos come up, and there's contact information on there. Our website has my phone number and my email addresses and everything if you need an investigation done. And that's pretty much where you can find out more about what research we're doing, and we're going to keep doing it too.
Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the URLs into the comment section so people can check that out. Make it a little bit easier for them.
Thanks.
You're very welcome. Please, guys, go check this out. If you are anything like us, you will have years worth of material to go over and say, okay, wow, okay, how can I apply this? How can I use all of this research in my own? And I have definitely used some of your ideas and your ways of looking outside the box and applying, certain things that we've learned before the paranormal research become a huge part of our lives. And, how can we use this? How can we use this knowledge to better ourselves and better our research? So for that, Robert, I appreciate and I thank you for.
No problem. No problem. Thank you for having me on the show, and thanks for supporting some of my ideas. Appreciate it.
Yes, I support you 100%, Robert. And is there anything else that you would like to add before we end our discussion tonight?
Gosh, I think we covered a lot of stuff. Yeah, just if people are interested, just check out those videos, because we just touched on some of the major devices. There are other ones there that I developed years ago that I still use, like the Paratalk. Mm-hmm. And more recently, I have another device that I use at a cemetery where it broadcasts my voice as an EMF signal, very, very high power, using a Bluetooth radio amplifier. And I show exactly how to build that. You could build that buying a $20 Bluetooth radio. You could build the exact device, and I show you how to make the coils and everything. So just check it out, and be creative, and don't be afraid to try these things. You can always email me. I can help you to get some of these things working, because I want to have other people in the field trying these things too. I'm open source as much as I can be. So
yes, give Robert feedback, please. Anything. Tell him he's stupid, okay? Anything. I'm sure he'll listen to it. Tell me why I'm stupid. That he will engage you. He will make you, your feedback worth something to him. And he's just not doing this. He's not talking to a brick wall. So if you do look at it, drop a comment, email him like you said, and let him know what you actually think so he can get that feedback, because it is valuable. Whatever form it comes in, it's valuable.
Yep, that's true.
All right. Well, Robert, thanks again for coming on the show. Before we end, did you take a look at the Cloud Chamber application, the video I linked you?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And when you were just talking about having minimal funding, I was just thinking about that video, because that would be a pretty expensive project if I was going to make something to cover a very large area,
right,
like you show on there. But I was thinking about that just when you said that. But the concept was really cool that you have in that video. And I like the idea, and it makes sense to me too. It's just one of those things implementing it. Mm-hmm. It's just like the Parashadow. I would love to have a parabolic mirror that was 20 feet in diameter, but it would weigh 10,000 pounds.
Yeah.
So I ended up with a portable one that was 20 centimeters that was used a vacuum pump that I can put on a tripod. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing. There's a physical limitation and a budgetary limitation to some of these ideas, but they're very sound ideas. I agree with that 100%, that idea.
All right. Yeah, I think on our prototype, my tech leader has spent a couple $100s just on the small prototype. So probably when it gets to about 6-7 foot tall by 3 or 4 foot, it might be $1,000 by that point. Yep. So it's going to just keep going up. But thanks, Robert. I'm going to let you go. I hope to talk to you more soon. I hope you get at least a little bit more interest in your work. You'll see people emailing you or trying to contact you about your your work. And I hope you have a good evening, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay, thanks for having me on. It was fun. Thanks.
You're welcome. You have a good evening.
You too.
Bye-bye. There you have it, folks. Robert Veach of V Paranormal. Super nice guy, super intelligent, and very passionate about what he does. Please go check out his work. I mean, he's on the top 5 of the people that I go to and I look at when I'm trying to come up with ways to not only validate, but objectify what you're actually looking at. Okay, so go check out his work, go check out his YouTube channel, subscribe to his YouTube channel, give him a bunch of feedback. If you support what he does, comment, like, subscribe, do everything you possibly can, because that will help, keep him going. It will give him a little bit more motive and incentive to keep doing all the great work that he is doing. Check out his website as well and let him know what you think about those things. And I think he would be tickled to death to know that somebody built, something that he done using the schematics that he provided for you to do the research, because that's what he wants to do. There is no shred of evidence that suggests that this man wants to capitalize or become famous or make a bunch of money off of this stuff. He wants to know if it actually works or not. So with all that being said, thank you for watching. I really appreciate each and every one of you tuning in every week to listen to not only me but the guests on our show, and it means a lot to me. So I'm going to head and introduce the next guest. I suck at doing that on the end of these shows, but I think we're looking at, this is the last Wednesday, so we're going into September here. So I'm trying to see on here, when's the first day in September? It would be the 6th, right? I'm trying to look on here. Rocky Gates from Chill Seekers. Oh boy, this is going to be the flip side of this whole show. So we get to talk to Rocky Gates of Chill Seekers. He's just come out with a new series for his videos and paranormal research that he does. He uses totally different ITC devices that we talked about on the show, so I get to talk to him about those devices and his beliefs. So you won't see a one-sided conversation on the show. We'll talk to everybody that does ITC research in the paranormal field. Super awesome guy. If you are a fan of Chill Seekers and Rocky, please tune in next Wednesday, September 6th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Please check out my work at www.interfacedeath.net. That's the hub of everything. You can subscribe to our mailing list so you get all the updates emailed to you directly. You can go to our YouTube channel, check out all of our videos there. You can check out all of our social media platforms. You can follow us in every facet of what we do. Please, I urge you and beg you to go do that to show me support, or at least give me some type of feedback on everything that I am doing. So, with all that being said, have a good evening. I will see you next week, and you guys take care.